Apparently, there's an Applebee's on the moon. Yeah. Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Brockopp side. Ad Astra was directed by James Gray and is about Brad Pitt in the not-too-distant future having to travel to Neptune because the universe is about to go kaboom, and there's a good chance he might end up running into his father, played by Tommy Lee Jones. And I know that was probably the most crude representation of the plot you will ever hear from anybody reviewing this movie, but you know what? You're here on the Brockopp side now. So I just got out of the Thursday night showing of this movie in IMAX, which is definitely the best way to have seen this movie, is on a very large format screen. This movie is a visually beautiful film. It provides such great immersive atmosphere. You feel like you're right there in space along Brad Pitt's character. You know, there's a scene at the beginning of the movie where Brad Pitt is climbing up this space antenna to repair this thing, and you feel like you're right alongside with him, because I remember this one part where the camera just kind of panned over to the Earth that's several thousand feet below, and I got a little bit of vertigo, feeling like I was right up there with him, which I think when it comes to making a space movie like this, you really need to feel like you're trapped in space with these characters, and I think that does that very well. And speaking of characters, this movie has a very limited cast, mainly the main character being Brad Pitt, who is this astronaut that gets sent into space to figure out where these weird power surges on Earth and throughout space are coming from, and there's a good chance that his father, who was sent into space 30 years beforehand, might still be alive, and might be behind this somehow. So you follow Brad Pitt's character throughout this literal space odyssey, and you really get to see who he really is. You know, for most of the movie he plays off like he's this kind of stoic, perfectly calm, mentally stable character. You know, his heart rate doesn't get over 80 BPM ever, so really you get to see this character flesh himself out and just really kind of start to peel back the layers a bit, which I think was really good, and Brad Pitt gives a great performance as this character. There's also some really nice supporting cast in there as well, like Liv Tyler as his ex-wife, and of course Tommy Lee Jones as his father, which I thought was really good, even though his role was a little bit smaller than I anticipated it was going to be. As far as the cinematography goes, this movie is beautifully shot. Every single frame of this movie is just so appealing on many regards. One of my favorite things about the cinematography and just the direction of this movie is, well, in this movie, this movie goes to a few different planets throughout the film: Earth, Mars, the Moon, and each one of them is lit and color graded in a way that makes it distinct from one another. And something else I really like about this movie is how it approaches technology in this film, because it doesn't try to go too far off from where we are now. It's basically like if in a few decades or so we had space stations on the moon and stuff, and it became a commercial thing where families could, you know, pay to go to the moon, and, you know, of course it's surrounded by gift shops and restaurants. And also, one more important thing I want to mention is, apparently, there's an Applebee's on the moon. Yeah. I do have a couple small issues with the movie in that it's a little slow in some areas. It's not a relatively fast-paced movie per se, but there are some areas where it felt like it dragged just a little bit. You know, and I don't really mind slow movies as long as I can get invested in the world and the characters, which I did here with this film, so it didn't bother me extremely, but I feel like that will be an issue for some people, so I feel like it's worth mentioning here in this review. And the other thing that did kind of bother me about the movie a little bit is that the main focus of this movie, what drives, you know, Brad Pitt to go into space and everything, and what his father was involved with, I feel like it just kind of gets swept under the rug a little bit towards the end of the film, where it kind of stops becoming the focus, so to speak, which, you know, you could argue it wasn't truly the focus of the movie to begin with, but it does feel like something that maybe could have been a little bit more of a threat and more of a conflict towards the end of it. So all in all, Ad Astra is a compelling space odyssey with Brad Pitt in outer space. I do recommend checking this movie out, especially on the largest format screen you can, because being surrounded in space on an IMAX screen, it's kind of what IMAX was built for to begin with, but, you know, it really just helps getting you immersed in outer space, feeling like you're stuck with Brad Pitt in the cosmos, and once you walk outside the theater and you see Earth and the sky again, you'll be like, oh, thank God! So, those are my thoughts on Ad Astra. If you guys have seen this movie, or if you're wondering why bad things keep happening in outer space, let me know that down below, and we'll see you on the Brockopp side.